Welcome to the Esport Research Report, presented by myself, Dr. Brian McCauley, here at Jönköping University in Sweden, and produced by Nicholas Hendelkens, Communications Lead for the Esport Research Network. This episode, we're talking to Dr. Kurtis Homan, Assistant Professor at St. Cloud State University in Minnesota, who's here to talk about his working paper that's going to make me feel a little bit dumber than I would like. His paper is called Pieces of Eight, a new tournament format for random seeding using Monte Carlo simulation. So, Kurtis, welcome to the podcast, and please tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me. So I'm Dr. Kurtis Homan. I'm an assistant professor at St. Cloud State University. A lot of my background within esports is I've been a competitor since the 90s in Street Fighter 2. Big games have been Tekken even till now. I practice for Combo Breaker, which is just coming up here in Chicago, Illinois, or Schaumburg, Illinois, I guess more specifically, but nobody knows what Schaumburg is compared to Chicago. And I've been kind of within the esports scene for on and off in a lot of different events, not only fighting games, but StarCraft 2, when that popped off, was getting heavily into casting and all that. So very diverse aspect background within esports. And then where my PhD was focusing on supply chain and operations, I'm pulling a lot of those theories and applying them to esports situations that we're currently having within the ecosystem. And that's kind of why I'm here today to talk about that.
Well, you in the preamble, you immediately notice I have Street Fighter 2 behind me. I used to have all
Exactly.
12, but I sold them on eBay when I moved countries. Now, the first important question is, in Street Fighter, who is your main character?
Right now in Street Fighter 6, I'm playing Jamie a lot. I know he's not considered a very good character, but he just kind of fits my flow. Especially, I like the drink mechanic that you can slowly power up. And if you get to that drink 3, drink 4, you become essentially the strongest character in the game as of now. And it's just, I like that dynamic of building that up.
I mean, what about the original? I used to put 10 pence pieces back in Ireland when I was 10 years old. It was either a pack of chips or playing Street Fighter 2, and you had to get past Zangief. Originally, which the original ones that you used to play?
In like championship edition, I actually was E Honda. I guess that was very easy. He had a lot of really bad matchups, especially the Guile matchup, and so then I would switch off to Ken. Those were kind of the two big ones. When it became ST, I of course had to be an old Sagat player. Just the Fireball Tiger Spam was just too strong to avoid.
Because see, now your credentials are established for our main audience, who is esports researchers. Like, everyone's got different esports and stuff, but you definitely know your fighting games. What I don't know, and I should know, maybe I don't know, but what is a Monte Carlo simulation?
Sure. And not every field uses it, or maybe you've used it and you just don't know that it's called a Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo simulations come from effectively creating a simulation that creates an analysis on like gambling, which ultimately was used for stock markets, of understanding of how options are calculated within the stock market. Monte Carlo simulations are there to simulate hundreds of thousands, if not millions of times, what outcomes could be. Through that simulation, through those millions of simulations, then they're able to establish of what that option's value is. And so Monte Carlo's, in a more simplistic term, if you would go to Vegas to try to introduce a new game, they're going to ask for a minimum of 2.5 million hands played, and you have to show that through a Monte Carlo simulation. So effectively, you're designing a different options point for players to try to evaluate what is going to be the return on a Las Vegas game's return over a long period of time. And if it makes the casino money, then they'll look into it. And if it doesn't make the money, then they're not going to buy into it.
The
So it's
house, the house always wins. But okay,
yeah.
so just of interest now, that in the era of AI, can I assume that there's a new level or generation of this Monte Carlo simulation sort of happening, that Black Mirror style, that suddenly the possibilities are infinite for people looking to examine stuff?
I haven't touched too much on. Well, that we can start now the whole debate of what AI is, because a lot of my colleagues, we say AI has been around since the 70s and 80s. I think what you're more referring to is the language models that effectively build off. Um, I haven't seen any recent things, but that's also because research is a little bit slower of implementing these newer technologies in a workplace. But you could effectively, I see it, you could build a simulation using one of those LLMs
So what
to
you're doing is you're
speed up.
using math. It's math calculations to do a Monte Carlo simulation. It's the sort of really high
Right.
level, clever, complicated stuff for the average person.
It's a little bit. So what we have is there's two fields. There's deterministic, which means that a length is always a length, rather than stochastic, in which there's a percentage of what that range of height is going to be or that length is going to be. What these simulations do is under that stochastic. So in when I'm talking about my research, I don't know your actual rank or rating or performance of how you're going to perform. And so we have to use a stochastic guess of what that's going to be over, hundreds of thousands of games that you are going to play. And as players play, we learn more. And so even our original measurement of what your rating is going to be could either go up or go down depending on how the rest of the field is going to be. So we try to use mathematical terms and probability to create these stochastic simulations to give us a best guess of how you're going to perform under a tournament condition.
Okay, so what made you want to design a new tournament format for this paper?
Uh, a lot of it comes from personal experience. As I've stated, I've been playing fighting games since the 90s, and I've gone through the phases of tournament organizers only running single elimination, and then we converted to double elimination through other avenues. Like I was in chess in high school, and they use most Swiss systems for evaluations and pairings and everything else. And it was a lot of just personal feelings of this doesn't feel good, and I can't put my finger on why it doesn't feel good. So it's over 20 years of kind of experience. And as I started to learn more about industrial engineering or supply chain operations, I would start to see these overlaps of fields. And so then when I would go on to Google Scholar or go to the library, nobody's really talking about it. And effectively, the most recent tournament format that was created was over 100 years ago. And so it was just like, well, we haven't looked at it. There's been a lot of advances in technology, in essentially of how we process thoughts. So why don't I evaluate my kind of bad feelings of this doesn't feel right? And is there a way to make it better for the player's experience? And so that was a big motivation of why I wanted to even start looking into this specific topic.
I mean, so how does this? When we talk about this working paper, right? So you said why a new tournament format, and how do you measure things like accuracy or time? What are the sort of things that realities of what you're doing?
Right. And so one of the things that like just didn't feel right was are these tournaments really measuring the right things? When we say we're going to go to the CPT, the Capcom Pro Tour, they're primarily using a double elimination tournament. Are they really measuring the best champion? And more importantly, and this is what my research is showing, it does a decent job of measuring top 8 or top 16 of all the people. But once you start entering large tournaments, these tournament evaluations are really bad at your final placement, because effectively, if you lose twice, then you're done. So a quarter of the field is going to be 0 and 2ers, and then quarter of just kind of building up until that last placement. And so if you are a new player or if you are a kind of a mid-tier player, your final ranking that you have in that tournament is extremely off. The accuracy is extremely poor, and especially when compared to like a Swiss format, which does take a lot longer, and round robin, which is going to be the best, but nobody is going to be able to play a single game for 150 years to get the most accurate data. And so we're looking at how we can get an accurate final placement with the shortest amount of time needed. And the accuracy comes from that placement. The time aspect comes from the actual time it requires to complete the game. And what we've even started using is bracket rounds rather than total games that need to be played. Because if you have an increased amount of stations, it actually shortens the entire length of that tournament. That hopefully is intuitive thinking. Rather than just playing on a single computer, you're playing on 16 or 32 computers, and it speeds up the tournament. And so that's how we're evaluating, are we going to be accurate with our final placement, and how long are these tournaments going to actually take us to complete?
So, I mean, you're trying to make a fairer approach to tournament organization, or it's a villain origin story where you lost and it was the tournament's fault, right? Like I was just hearing like people going, well, like, my rank in Valorant or CS:GO is this, but it's not fair. And because there is a paper on League of Legends that says like people who think their rank should be higher, it's like no, they shouldn't. I mean, so
Yeah.
what are some of the preliminary findings on this paper?
Some preliminary findings is I'm trying to pull up some of these boring figures. We have some really interesting things that we have found. So, if we're looking at a smaller type of format, and this could be in any types of either esports or traditional sports, and we hover around that 8-person man. I'm talking about your local that you're playing with. If you would run a single elimination, we know exactly how long that's going to take. If you run this pieces of 8 format, it will take the exact same amount of time, but your accuracy goes from about 60% of looking at that entire field to effectively 95%. You are extremely more accurate of ranking every single person under the exact same amount of time because you're utilizing all of your resources available. And so it's that huge aspect of looking at it from not just one, but of how everything works together to come up with that final solution. Another big thing that we have, I'm currently working around that 64 range. That's where I see a lot of kind of more stable tournaments fall under. We actually are beating double elimination and Swiss, depending on the time allocated, about 60% to 95% of the time, meaning that it is weakly to strongly dominated compared to these older formats. Uh,
So essentially, what you're proposing is making esport tournaments a more fair reflection for everyone. And if you play in this tournament and you finish better than your friends, you can say, "Well, we're using this tournament format, so mathematically, I am actually better. It wasn't the tournament's fault."
right. It eliminates a lot of that just kind of quote unquote bad pairing or bad seeding that we're seeing. And even from my experiences, there's been so many times that immediately I'm paired with Anakin. If you're within the Tekken space, I've had to face Anakin twice super early on, and he's a top player. So it was just and it didn't matter if our games went 1 and 2 and Anakin winning. I would still get eliminated to the bottom bracket, and then I would still have to kind of really slog through having to play double the amount of games that he would have to play to even get close to the end. What this is doing is making a fair ground in which we're all playing effectively the same amount of games. And so, with those accurate amount of games, our pairings are better between each round. And so, our final placement is actually going to be far more accurate because we're evaluating each of us have playing 6 games compared to me playing 3 games and him playing 8 games. The disparities are extremely large within especially compared to a double elimination bracket.
I mean, like a simple analogy is you're playing at Wimbledon and you get the Djokovic or the top seed in the first
Right.
round. You go, I'm screwed. I'm out in the first round because I wasn't seeded and I got him, and my friend is also not seeded. Got the injured number 10 seed and had a chance. I mean
Right.
that's fine. I'm surprised. This actually sounds brilliant in terms of in terms of actually some of the key issues we see in sports in general. Sometimes sport is a lot of chance and esports can have luck and stuff. But what you're doing is reducing the impact of luck or a bad draw on how players ranked, and stops their effort and training and
Correct.
performances not being rewarded. So this is a working paper, and so what sort of academic discipline? Because the Esport Research Network it's esports is very interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary, and we have everyone from every area and podcast. So what sort of academic discipline do you publish something like this in?
S- I've been looking at applied statistics, in which they're looking at common problems within statistics. There's a lot of special papers that random journals will randomly have just kind of a blind acceptance, or they're specifically looking at esports or traditional sports. And so that's where I've been looking. The most recent paper that I have evaluated the Swiss format under. When the population is 32, and that was a published in Journal of Applied Statistics in 2022. What they also used was something called a mean squared error to measure the accuracy, and we are using that mean squared error as well to help determine final placement of all the players. And so we're building off a little bit of that research to hopefully get into applied statistics. But rather than that paper only looking at when population is 32, we are looking at multiple scales from 32 all the way up to 8,000. Where is it? Of course, I can't find that number.
It doesn't matter.
It's
Look,
yeah,
here's the
it's a,
thing.
but
This is actually a practical value. Like if you want to see this implemented so that
mhm.
esports is and competitive titles are so important. There's a better experience. Well, I think with the single players a little bit more because it's hard to get 100 teams
Right, right.
into a thing. But for single or dual player titles like Rocket League or FC 26 or whatever it is now,
Mhm.
this is could be very impactful on a practical level.
Yeah. So not only of the large entries, so like the Evo, which is coming up in Las Vegas they just moved to June, I think. It's traditionally been in August, but they moved it to June. They have consistently over 7,000 entries that need to be organized and to play in their games. But when we look at these team sports like Dota, League of Legends, that are 5 players to a team, you their numbers are going to be a lot smaller for like team entrants. However, the what I want to show is it doesn't matter if it's 8 players or 8 teams that are competing or 8,000 teams. This tournament format is going to be the best representation under time to evaluate all players. Because what we don't want, and you gave the example before, we have a lot of brand new players that have never played competitively that have to face off versus the best players in the world in their respective esports. And while it might feel good of, hey, I got to fight or I got to be paired up versus this player, my performance is going to be an 0 and 2. Like that's what's going to happen. But if I'm able to use this tournament format, I'm actually able to evaluate where I finished for that tournament. And I can use that as an anchor point for when I enter into the next tournament of my progress of, am I actually improving over time? Am I declining or am I plateauing within my certain rank?
I've done a lot of episodes of this podcast previously. This is part of the relaunch and stuff. I actually think your work could have the single greatest impact on the world in a really subtle way. That, like, if you're successful, it sounds like something that can have a positive impact and make the world a little bit more fair and equitable and enjoyable. And I think actually that's brilliant. I'm actually quite surprised. It's fantastic. I mean, okay, finally, Curtis, like, just what are your ideas about sort of this sort of stuff about future research that also needs to be explored in esports? Once you've got this done, what's the next steps?
I think, and this shouldn't be a big surprise to anybody. I think I've heard the term the winter of esports, of which we're looking at financial gains, in which we're having a lot of popularity and growth within specific titles, but the financial outcome, especially with third party operators of organizing tournaments and everything else, has been a little bit faulty, or they've been struggling, not faulty, if that's the wrong word. And be, based on my background in business, that's something that I would like to look at of how can we make a financial sustainable ecosystem that not only works with the publishers but also creates this medium of third party organizers to actually help the players. And so rather than having our siloed systems of everybody, yes, we're part of the same ecosystem, but what I've researched and what I've studied within supply chain is how you get all those individual silos to actually work with each other. And so that's where I would kind of like to go to the next steps with future research and esports of how do we make this financially sustainable.
Okay, I wish you the best with that, mate, because that's what we're all pondering. I've even published
Right.
papers questioning that myself. Okay, Curtis, thank you very much for being on the podcast. I was actually surprisingly interesting based on the title, and I actually really wish you well in actually getting this implemented into the modern world. So thank you so much.
And thank you for having me today, Brian.